Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to picture this. The fire's crackling, the woods around you are dark, and the only thing you can hear is the story.
And tonight, the stories we have, they aren't just stories, they're reports. Dossier.
That's right. They're a collection of globally synchronized nightmares. This is a deep dive into some of the most intense, detailed, and frankly terrifying close encounters ever documented.
We're spanning the globe. From 1964 to 1989, we'll be in the quiet vineyards of Japan, the lavender fields of France,
And the scorched desert of Iran. And these accounts, they resist easy explanation.
They do. They're often told in a very dramatic way, but our mission here is to peel back those emotional layers.
We want to get to the data.
Exactly. To extract the hard data and look for the common denominator in all this chaos.
And there's so much chaos. We're not talking about, distant lights in the sky. Not this time.
No. These reports involve physical contact. They involve burns, paralysis, and tangible physical traces left on the earth.
So we're going to be analyzing witness behavior, the strange physical markings.
And specifically, the descriptions of the entities themselves and their technology.
The focus here is going to be on the consistency, the almost chilling consistency you find in reports separated by thousands of miles.
And decades. You're talking about specific recurring physical evidence, soil marks, strange burns.
And these entity descriptions, they so often deviate wildly from what you'd expect, from the cultural narrative.
Right. They feature these mechanical or grotesque attributes, not the sort of smooth, featureless figures most people imagine. We need to ask why these details repeat.
Because that consistency, that's the real horror, isn't it?
It is.
How does a 7-year-old boy in rural Japan sketch the exact same mechanical claw that a foreman in Mississippi describes years later?
That's the pattern.
That's the thread we're following tonight. And it begins in a very, very quiet place.
So let's start with a case that is almost pristine in its detail.
Why pristine?
Largely because the witnesses were children and their testimony was rigorously tested.
Okay, so where are we?
We're going back to 1975 Kofu City in Japan's Yamanashi Prefecture.
Picture the scene. It's a quiet, cold February evening. 2 7-year-old boys, Masato Kawano and Katsuhiro Yamaha, are walking home.
And they're walking through these dormant vineyards. The air is crisp. The mountains are casting these long, dark shadows.
It's just after 6 o'clock in the evening. And the boys, they see something.
2 distinct orange lights against the darkening sky.
At first, they probably thought it was just, routine air traffic, maybe headlights from a truck on a distant road.
But the lights behaved unnaturally.
How so?
They hung too still, too steady, and then they did something impossible.
They didn't just move.
No, they merged. They became one single, brighter glow.
And this merged light began a steady, deliberate descent. It just sank right into the bare vineyard.
So the boys, driven by this, powerful mix of fear and sheer curiosity, they creep forward.
And there, resting silently among the rows of vines, they find it.
They described it as a domed craft, roughly 5 meters across, metallic, but glowing.
Glowing orange from within, right?
Yeah.
The light was spilling through the scene.
Exactly, and it wasn't silent. That's a critical detail. Our source describes this low, persistent humming vibration.
A kind you feel more than you hear.
Yes, so deep and resonant that the children felt it physically vibrating in their chests. It felt alive, pulsing.
And then a door slid open.
And the thing that emerged, it completely defies the typical alien narrative of that era.
This is what we started calling the anti-gray.
A perfect description. The figure that stepped out was small, maybe 120 centimeters, humanoid, but the proportions were all wrong.
The head was enormous, bulbous, and the skin on its face. It wasn't soft.
No, it looked wrinkled and metallic, like weathered, pounded copper.
And it had these sharply pointed ears that jutted out, just aggressively.
But the truly unique, the chilling data point, the detail that makes this report so valuable, it was the hands.
The boys didn't see fingers.
They saw curved metallic claws, glistening, hard surfaces that terminated in these sharp points.
In the mid-70s, alien iconography was shifting, but this description, metallic, grotesque, clawed, that was truly alien to any media influence.
It's a detail you just don't invent.
And the encounter moved from just observation to physical violation in an instant.
The being approached. It tilted his large head as if it was studying one of the boys, Masato.
And then it reached out with one of those clawed hands and placed it on his shoulder.
The effect was immediate, total paralysis.
Masato was frozen, physically locked, His mind was screaming, but he was unable to move a single muscle.
And this phenomenon, this sudden, specific physical lockdown, it's a data thread that runs through almost every encounter we're going to analyze tonight.
The paralysis only lifted when the other boy, Katsuhiro, finally screamed and bolted.
And they ran. But the story doesn't end there, with just the eyewitnesses.
No, because neighbors later confirmed seeing something.
They reported a strange, steady orange glow over that exact vineyard, describing it in this chilling way.
The field was burning, but without flames.
I mean, what a description. And then came the physical investigation,
Police found shallow, symmetrical impressions in the cold soil.
which indicates something substantial, something heavy, had briefly landed there. And nearby, they found grass that was singed, brittle, unnaturally browned.
But for me, the key piece of evidence, the thing that just defeats any skepticism here, is the sketch analysis.
Absolutely. When questioned by the police, they were asked to draw what they had seen.
Separately, without consulting each other.
And these two 7-year-old boys produced almost identical illustrations of the domed craft and,
Very
crucially,
clawed, wrinkled, pointed-ear figures. Why does that kind of cross-validation, especially from children, carry so much weight?
because children are highly susceptible to suggestion, right? But those suggestions almost always come from cultural norms.
Cartoons, movies, comics.
Exactly. The fact that two separate children, under that kind of stress, independently drew beings with features like metallic skin and clawed hands details that were just not present in their culture's media, it suggests they weren't inventing.
They were remembering.
They were drawing from a shared, objective, terrifying sensory input. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a memory of something impossibly bizarre.
From the quiet terror in that Japanese vineyard, let's jump back 10 years and half a world away.
We're going to the Valençol encounter in France, 1965. And here, the physical scar that was left behind was, well, it was undeniable.
We moved to the picturesque lavender fields of Provence. The witness, Maurice Mass, was a 41-year-old farmer.
And he was known for being reliable, a level-headed man.
One summer morning, he hears a sound. It's not a tractor. It's a faint metallic whistling. And he follows it.
And there, resting silently in his lavender, was a dome-shaped craft, about 4 to 5 meters across, sitting on 6 telescopic legs. It was just humming faintly.
The first piece of physical evidence was the damage.
Right. The craft had left this large circular patch of crushed, flattened lavender plants. But the long-term impact was even more startling.
At the center of that circle, the soil was permanently hardened.
The description was that it had been baked by intense heat or pressure. It was as though a hyper-efficient oven had been pressed right into the ground.
And there were beings there, behaving clinically.
2 small figures, about 1.2 meters tall. They had large heads and pale, chalk-like skin, and were wearing these tight-fitting
And
suits.
they weren't hiding. They were just observing the lavender. One of them was using a small, rod-like device.
Taking samples, maybe measurements. This reinforces a recurring theme we see.
They're collectors, analysts, focused on our ecology.
But when Maurice Mass approached them, that clinical detachment it snapped.
One of the beings turned and pointed that rod device directly at him.
And there it is again, instant, total physical paralysis.
Maurice was conscious, fully aware of his surroundings, but utterly unable to move or make a sound.
And the beings, they just calmly finished their work. They boarded the craft, which retracted its legs, lifted smoothly.
And then shot into the sky at a phenomenal speed.
What's fascinating here, though, is the sustained violation of the land itself. For years, the lavender refused to grow back in that circular scar.
He replanted it, didn't he?
Yep.
Repeatedly.
Over and over. But the soil was permanently altered. It was unable to sustain life.
So if you connect this back to Kofu,
Where the grass was singed and brittle, and the soil was indented.
Valençol shows us the long-term effect. It's not just a pressure mark. It's an ecological wound left by some unknown energy source.
And that detail separates these accounts from simple hoaxes. I mean, who in 1965 had the technical knowledge or the resources to mimic a permanent, localized soil alteration like that?
Nobody. Which sets up our third case in this section perfectly. The Westall UFO encounter in Australia, 1966.
This case is crucial, not because of the intimate details of the entity,
But because of the sheer scale of the witnesses and the terrifying speed of the official erasure that followed.
the scale is just immense. We're talking over 200 students and staff at Westall High School in Melbourne.
And it happened during recess. Midday. This isn't some dark, lonely field. It's a crowded schoolyard.
They saw a dull gray, saucer-shaped object about the size of 2 cars. It hovered, it dipped, and then it silently descended into a nearby patch of scrubland.
The kids rushed the fence lines, some even broke through, and they saw it rest briefly before shooting upward and vanishing with impossible speed.
The physical trace was immediate. A circle of flattened, scorched, and twisted vegetation where the object had been. The children saw the scorched earth. They touched the strange, brittle grass.
But here's where the story turns. The mechanism of suppression.
Before the school day was even over, strangers appeared.
Men in dark suits. Workers. They immediately cordoned off the area. This was a highly coordinated, decisive effort.
And then the headmaster convened the entire school. He issued a stern warning that nothing unusual had happened.
And he threatened punishment for anyone caught spreading tales.
This is such a powerful analytic moment. Westall isn't just a mass sighting. It's proof of an immediate, successful institutional effort to suppress a public event that involved physical evidence.
It raises the question, who are these men in dark suits, and how were they mobilized so quickly to control 200 witnesses?
It suggests there was a pre-existing protocol, a plan for covering up this exact type of event.
Imagine being a child. You witness something impossible. You see the proof of it in the scorched earth.
And then you're told, under threat, that your own reality is wrong, that you saw nothing.
The official response here is almost as frightening as the sighting itself. It forced a shared memory into the realm of trauma and whispered secrets.
If that first set of stories was about quiet landings and lasting scars, this next part, this is where the terror becomes overt.
Aggressive confrontation. Encounters with figures that are explicitly grotesque or mechanical. We start in the Soviet Union, 1989, the twilight of the Cold War.
The Voronezh Park landing. This one is remarkable just for its boldness. It happened in South Park, Voronezh, in broad daylight.
With dozens of witnesses, children and nearby adults. The event itself was pure spectacle.
Witnesses first saw a glowing red sphere descend, which then dramatically morphed into a massive metallic craft.
And the beings that emerged were colossal. We're talking about giants, at least 3 meters tall.
Clad in shimmering silvery suits with featureless helmets or masks, the size alone is pure intimidation.
And that intimidation was amplified by what was with them.
A smaller, stiff, mechanical robot. It moved with this piston-like stiffness. The presence of the machine alongside the giant humanoids just adds to this unsettling artificial quality.
And the core act here was a deliberate demonstration of power.
One of the giant beings used a rod-like device, aimed it at a boy who was standing nearby, and instantly, the boy vanished.
Just gone.
He reappeared moments later, unharmed but extremely pale and frightened. The psychological impact of watching a peer dematerialize and then reappear. It's devastating. It's a display of control over matter, maybe even time.
And on top of that, witnesses reported physical and psychological manipulation.
A strange pressure in their heads, a feeling that their thoughts were being compressed, and that familiar paralysis that rooted them to the ground.
It implies some kind of targeted energy or a neurological weapon.
Now here's the Soviet twist. This is something that needs explaining. Why would the highly controlled Soviet state media, which traditionally debunked all UFO claims as Western nonsense,
suddenly amplified this extreme surreal story?
The local paper ran it, and then the state-run news agency TESS broadcast the report of 3-meter-tall aliens internationally.
The prevailing theory is that in 1989, during Glasnost, this served a specific political goal. Maybe it was a controlled release to distract from internal turmoil.
Or maybe recognizing the undeniable physical evidence, the scorched grass, the elevated radiation levels reported by the Voronezh Geophysical Institute. Maybe the regime decided that controlling the narrative was safer than total denial.
So they presented it as state-verified fact.
Whatever the reason, it lent the surreal story an official international weight. It was an unprecedented move, and it confirmed the presence of colossal entities capable of this kind of manipulation.
Okay, next we move across the world and 2 decades earlier. Cisco Grove, California, 1964. This is a story of a prolonged siege.
And the witness, Donald Shrum, was the perfect candidate for credibility. He was a 28-year-old experienced hunter and, crucially, a missile systems technician.
A man whose entire career relied on observation and technical acuity.
Shrum was trapped, alone, overnight. He was secured high in a sturdy pine tree after being separated from his hunting party.
As darkness fell, a circular craft descended, and the adversaries appeared below him.
The creatures were small humanoids, angular and helmeted. But the star of this horror show was the main figure.
A stiff metallic robot.
With glowing eyes and limbs that moved like pistons, we see that repetition again. The mechanical, rigid entity design found in Voronezh, implied by the claws in Khufu.
And the confrontation was sustained and methodical. The beings gathered below his tree, and they used the robot to deploy a blast of white vapor or gas upwards, repeatedly.
Shrum described immediate toxic symptoms. His throat burned, his vision blurred, and his muscles weakened severely. This was a sustained attack with a chemical or paralyzing agent.
They were trying to force him down from the tree, and he fought off these waves of toxic gas for hours, secured only by his belt.
His defense? Firing arrows? But they were useless. They just sparked harmlessly off the metallic figures.
So the beings were patient, relentless. They ignored every strike. This wasn't a skirmish, it was a demonstration of technological superiority.
The aftermath validated his account. Shrum emerged at dawn, pale, unsteady, his clothes torn and singed, and they found scorch marks on the tree bark where the gas had hit.
In Project Blue Book, the official U.S. Air Force investigation, they reviewed his credible background and the serious nature of the evidence and filed the case as genuinely unexplained.
And for Project Blue Book to file a sustained attack involving a metallic robot as unexplained, that speaks volumes. It shows that contemporary science simply could not dismiss his account.
Finally, in this section, we move south and east to one of the most famous cases of clinical capture.
The Pascagoula abduction. Mississippi, 1973.
Charles Hickson, a 42-year-old foreman, and Calvin Parker, a 19-year-old employee, were fishing on the Pascagoula River, a quiet October night.
When a large, football-shaped craft, glowing pale blue and humming intensely, hovered over the water.
And then figures emerged, floating toward them. Our sources describe three unequivocally grotesque beings.
Tall, 5 to 6 feet, with wrinkled gray skin, bulbous, featureless heads. And most chillingly,
Rigid, metallic, claw-like pincers.
that clicked faintly as they moved. Let's pause on that for a second. We have the Khufu metallic claws and now the Pascagoula rigid pincers. It suggests a non-biological mechanical interface for contact.
They were instantly paralyzed and lifted effortlessly into the craft. Parker fainted, but Hickson remained conscious. He provided the clinical details.
Hickson recalls lying paralyzed on a smooth surface while a single glowing device. He described it as a large, unblinking eye, descended from the ceiling.
And it scanned his body with total, cold, clinical detachment.
That's the word he used, clinical. No emotion, no communication, just procedure.
Hickson later found small puncture marks on his arm where the pincer had gripped him. The immediate physical effects were nausea and weakness. But the moment that solidified this case for investigators was the secret tape.
The skeptical sheriff's deputies, they secretly tape-recorded Hickson and Parker. They left them alone in an office expecting them to eventually break character and admit it was all a hoax.
But instead, the raw fear captured on that recording is devastating. We hear Hickson's terrified, steady voice confirming what happened, and then Parker's hysterical, broken whispers.
I can't take it, Charlie. They could come back. They could come back.
That is the sound of genuine psychological shattering. It's unscripted, unfiltered terror.
And it convinced law enforcement, against all their professional skepticism, that these men were experiencing a reality that was genuinely impossible. Pascagoula encapsulates it all. The grotesque entity, the clinical exam, and the immense psychological trauma.
So now we move beyond the initial terror of the confrontation itself.
And we look at the lasting human cost, the shared psychological trauma, the permanent physical damage.
And the systematic, determined official denial that just deepens the horror.
We begin with the Allagash abductions in Maine, 1976. This is a powerful case because it involves 4 witnesses. 4 credible people in a pristine wilderness setting.
Jim and Jack Weiner, Charles Foltzes, and Charles Rack. They were outdoorsmen and art students canoeing on Eagle Lake. They weren't, UFO enthusiasts.
And the trigger was an attempted SOS. They saw a bright, pulsing light in the sky and they flashed a lantern at it, hoping for help.
The light responded. It moved directly toward them.
And their next memory is standing on the shore. Hours had vanished.
Missing time. The fire they had left burning was just smoldering embers.
They tried to push that terrifying void aside, but recurring, vivid nightmares and anxiety began to plague them for years.
The memories only surfaced years later through hypnotic regression. Now, what makes this so significant is the synchronous nature of their separate testimonies.
Under regression, they all produced startlingly consistent accounts.
They recalled being paralyzed, taken aboard the craft, and undergoing these clinical examinations.
And here we meet the classic grays. Small, frail figures with large, black, almond-shaped eyes performing cold, efficient procedures, involving instruments and painful insertion with long needles.
This is where we need to do a critical comparison. We have the Allagash Greys, frail, smooth, large-eyed, versus the Kofu and Pascagoula grotesques.
Right, the wrinkled, mechanical, clawed figures. Why the massive difference in appearance across these accounts?
Well, there are a few possibilities suggested by the sources. One, they represent different entities or species, all using similar techniques like paralysis and abduction.
Two, the Greys are biological workers, while the grotesques, especially the ones with mechanical hands and stiff movements, are synthetic beings. Drones or biological robots, perhaps.
But regardless of the difference in how they looked, their behavior is chillingly consistent.
Cold, clinical detachment, focused on examination and measurement. They communicate telepathically, a flood of impressions and feelings, not words, and they use physiological manipulation.
The power of the Allagash case really lies in that collective trauma. 4 credible witnesses, all sharing identical details of a violation, suggests an objective shared event.
An event that left behind a synchronous shared psychological scar.
From that shared psychological trauma, we now shift to lasting, undeniable physical toxic damage. The Falcon Lake incident, Canada, 1967.
The witness was Stefan Michalak, a prospector and a geologist, a man who understands rock formations and chemical composition.
Michalak spotted a disc about 35 feet across, polished like steel. It had landed nearby. He noted a metallic, sulfurous smell.
He approached, thinking maybe he could offer assistance, but the hatch sealed instantly.
The response was aggression. A sudden blast of extremely hot air erupted from a grid-like panel on the side of the craft.
It struck Stefan, searing his clothes and his chest.
The result was physically devastating. He suffered severe, precise grid pattern burns, a lattice of trauma that perfectly reflected the panel that emitted the blast.
But the surface injury was only the beginning. He immediately developed debilitating symptoms consistent with acute radiation poisoning.
Severe nausea, relentless vomiting, rapid weight loss, and his hair started thinning.
This wasn't just heat. The physical evidence was irrefutable. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, they confirmed a scorched circle at the site.
And critically, they found unusual localized radiation readings, significantly higher than background levels.
Furthermore, investigators found fused silver veins in the rock at the landing site. Now, to fuse silver veins, you need immense focused heat. We're talking in excess of 960 degrees Celsius.
It implies a powerful, unnatural energy source had briefly rested there.
And the lingering toll is haunting. Stefan's health never fully recovered. The grid mark remained permanently scarred on his skin. It would occasionally flare bright red,
Suggesting a persistent physiological effect, a permanent, toxic brand. The Falcon Lake case screams that this technology is not only advanced, but actively dangerous.
It leaves toxic biological markers behind. And this leads us to perhaps the most horrifying convergence of physical harm and official suppression.
The Cash Landrum encounter in Texas, 1980.
This happened on a remote country road. 3 witnesses, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and her young grandson, Colby.
They encountered a massive diamond-shaped craft hovering directly over the road, belching fire or flames from its underside.
The sheer intensity of the radiant heat was immediate and searing. The metal of their car popped and groaned from the thermal stress.
And Betty Cash, who stepped out of the car, was instantly hit by heat trauma.
The physical toll was swift and catastrophic. It resembled the worst effects of radiation exposure.
Betty suffered rapid onset symptoms. Blistering skin, severely swollen eyes, her hair fell out in clumps, relentless vomiting. Doctors later recognized it as acute radiation syndrome.
Vicki and Colby suffered persistent but milder symptoms, likely because they were slightly shielded by the car.
But the truly staggering, unacknowledged factor of this case is the military response.
As this toxic diamond-shaped craft descended, dozens of helicopters, at least 20, described as U.S. military, surrounded it and escorted it north.
This wasn't just a quick flyover. This was a highly organized, coordinated military operation, tracking an unknown, dangerous technology.
And the denial that followed just deepened the horror. Betty Cash's health dramatically declined over the next 2 decades, leading to repeated hospitalizations and eventually her death in 1998.
Her death was directly linked to her chronic radiation-like injuries. They filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government demanding acknowledgement and compensation.
And here is the official terror. The U.S. government consistently and vehemently denied any knowledge of the craft or the helicopters.
This isn't just denying a sighting. It's denying the presence of dozens of observed U.S. military aircraft escorting a toxic craft that physically ruined American citizens.
It implies a high degree of organized awareness and a cold, determined effort to hide the existence of a potentially hostile, toxic technology.
They chose to sacrifice the health and credibility of their own citizens rather than acknowledge the phenomenon. The terror is twofold: the toxic assault from the craft and the deliberate cover-up by the state.
So we've established these patterns: psychological manipulation, paralysis, toxic residue. But the question remains, how advanced is this technology really?
For that, we look at the Tehran UFO incident in Iran, 1976. This provides the clearest evidence of technological dominance.
And this is not a sighting by fearful civilians. This is a confrontation between advanced military systems and the unknown.
It started with multiple civilian reports across Tehran of a bright light hovering, too large and steady for a star.
So the Iranian Air Force scrambled two F-4 Phantom jets, sophisticated fighter aircraft supplied by the U.S.
The first F-4 pursuit immediately revealed the object's capability for technological disarmament.
As the pilot attempted to lock the object onto his radar, his entire instrument panel went dead. Communications cut out instantly. He was flying blind and deaf.
Shaken, he broke pursuit. And the moment he turned away, his systems immediately restored.
That's a crucial distinction. The craft didn't just jam the radar, it selectively neutralized complex electronics from a distance. It showed an intelligent, targeted awareness of the F-4's offensive capacity.
So a second F-4 was dispatched. It approached the glowing sphere, and as it neared, the situation escalated.
A smaller, intense orb detached from the main object and shot directly toward the fighter jet at an impossible speed.
The pilot recognized the threat. He armed a missile, ready to launch, but again.
The weapon panel instantly went dead. The missile would not launch. Communications failed once more.
And the smaller orb veered away at the very last moment.
Analyze the strategy there. The orb demonstrated its ability to destroy the F-4. It forced the pilot to arm his weapon, but it chose only to neutralize the defenses.
It was a technological warning, a display of power, not an act of destruction.
The official Iranian Air Force report, later cataloged by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, concluded the object demonstrated capabilities beyond known technology,
selectively disabling systems and displaying intelligence and awareness of the pursuit.
And the DIA confirmation is vital here. It emphasizes the credibility of the witnesses' trained pilots, radar controllers, and the objective instrumentation failures.
This incident proves that whatever this technology is, it's capable of rendering global air superiority systems useless in seconds.
It acted with strategic, non-destructive intelligence. It was effectively a technological ghost. Visible, trackable, yet completely unassailable.
And if you connect this back to Cisco Grove, where the robot selectively used a debilitating gas,
or Pascagoula, where the creature used specific physical paralysis,
and now Tehran, where electronics were selectively neutralized, the pattern is clear. This phenomenon possesses technology designed for targeted control, neutralization, and examination, not for outright warfare.
They are capable of overpowering us at the physiological, electronic, and strategic levels, yet they consistently choose to incapacitate or analyze. It suggests a motive centered on study rather than conquest.
We have spent this time tracing these terrifying common threads across continents, decades, and highly credible witnesses.
From the small-scale capture in Pascagoula to the high-stakes technological disarmament in Tehran.
And what emerges is this global pattern of interaction. It's defined by very specific characteristics.
A range of non-human morphology, from the frail, clinical grays of Allagash to the grotesque mechanical figures of Kofu, Pascagoula, and Cisco Grove. But they all share a common operational protocol.
And that protocol includes the consistent use of highly specific physical and neurological effects. Immediate debilitating paralysis.
Kofu, Valensole, Pascagoula, Allagash.
And the use of toxic residual damage that leaves lasting scars and radiation-like symptoms on the human body.
Falcon Lake, Cash Landrum.
Furthermore, these patterns suggest that this global phenomenon is not random. It's intelligently managed.
It displays advanced technological control over human physiology and complex electronics, and its existence is aggressively managed and denied by state institutions.
Even when it costs human lives, as we saw in Westall and Cash Landrum.
The overarching implication is that these beings demonstrated a complete technological superiority, not just for flight, but for control.
They treated humans as specimens to be examined, as obstacles to be neutralized. or as resources to be measured, like in Valençol.
We have analyzed encounters where witnesses were silenced, scoffed at, or left physically ruined. And we have analyzed Tehran, where the highest levels of our advanced weaponry were rendered useless in seconds.
The beings demonstrated our vulnerability and then simply chose to leave in silence.
Which brings us to a final, crucial question for you, the listener, as you reflect on the totality of this evidence.
If this phenomenon is real, and the source material suggests a non-human intelligence with complete mastery over the laws of physics and biology as we know them, what is more terrifying?
That they arrived on our planet.
Or that after demonstrating our complete helplessness, they simply vanished, without ever feeling the need to offer us the courtesy of an explanation.
It implies that their goal, whatever it is entirely removed from our concept of diplomacy or communication or even conflict. They treat us not as equals or threats, but as a footnote in a larger, incomprehensible research project. And that detachment, that is the ultimate source of terror.